my sets of nails off, but I was able to put one back on. I had to take my nails off because I'm wearing 2 girdles and 4 pairs of pantyhose, and had to pee.
Yeah.
So she did.
so peeing prevailed. Okay, are we recording?
We are.
Oh, that's great. So I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about an issue that came up in multiple episodes, and it's the idea of elder care. And we see in the episode, what was it called? It's not Show Me the Money, One for the Money. We see in the One for the Money episode where the girls go through a number of, and they kind of flash back through a number of money-making schemes that they have tried over the years, that even though they put on the appearance of being financially solvent most of the time, and it's obvious that also Blanche inherited a bunch of money from her marriage, that finances for the girls are also not consistently great. So it started me thinking, and then when we see Alvin in the episode where Sophia gets the boyfriend on the boardwalk who has Alzheimer's, and then his daughter is able to take a leave from her job so that she can watch him from afar during the day, and then they end up bringing him to New York because he's able to be cared for by another relative. So there's multiple indications that getting older requires either money or dependence on the state. And as I've talked about before, every single time we're here, I'm not a huge fan of capitalism, and not a huge fan of the way that we're kind of running ourselves into the ground right now. And it got me thinking about specifically about what happens, and the point of me doing these kinds of sermons. Oh, I'm getting real wobbly up on this thing. Haven't even been drinking. But the point of me doing these sermons is to talk about some of the issues that come up in the Golden Girls and make connections to our queer realities in the present. And the thing that really stuck for me was thinking about the care and kind of like openness that Sophia was bringing to the table with Alvin in the loving relationship, and the importance, which is the thing that I talk about over and over again, is the importance of building queer families and building chosen family, especially in forming bonds and plans for how we're going to look after ourselves in our dotage, which for some of us is happening sooner than later. As aside from Michelle DeBerry, I am the tiredest, oldest queen in Toronto. So the thing that I find doesn't get addressed in a way that I think is it's not that it's inadequate, but I feel like it could be fleshed out more, and it doesn't really get addressed in the series, except when Sophia rescues a friend from an old age home or a nursing home or senior care home, and they talk about the inequalities of care, but otherwise it doesn't really get addressed in terms of the inadequacies of kind of putting our elderly into care facilities and then just kind of forgetting about them. And when we think about, as queer people, depending on these care facilities or depending on the state for holding on to our identities and holding on to our agency, it gets even trickier. So just as one example, my late friend Mike Hamilton was an AIDS activist from Windsor, Ontario, and he passed away, I think 2 years ago now, of AIDS accelerated cancer. The last time I saw him was at a Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance meeting, and we were both on the Positively Healthy, whatever, subcommittee of like gay men living with HIV, kind of doing gay men's health work. And I didn't recognize him because his cancer had accelerated, and he was really, really, really thin, and I knew him as like a big kind of bearish dude. And he recognized my inability to place him, and kind of told me about, you know, the fact that he was dying, and that this was likely the last time that I was going to see him because he was becoming too ill to travel. So and we'll turn the light on so you can see me. Great. So his family kept talking about dying of cancer, and he was like, I spent, you know, my adult life fighting to be recognized as an AIDS activist, and now in my death they're not even allowing me to die of AIDS because my family doesn't want to talk about it. They are only talking because I have lost agency and my ability to kind of make my own decisions about this, so everyone's only talking about it in terms of cancer because the family's ashamed of acknowledging that he was living with HIV and dying with HIV. And it was a thing that like just stopped me in my tracks, and we shared a good cry about it. And it's a thing that I have talked to my family about since, my genetic family, to say, until I figure out what a will for myself looks like, I want you to know that, like, I refuse to, if I'm gonna die of AIDS, I want it to be named as AIDS. I don't want it to be like that I get cancer or that I have a heart attack. If I have health issues that are related to my HIV, I want them to be named. And I think that that's something that's not specific to people living with HIV. I think that's also an issue for queer people as we age, and especially if we end up in care facilities, thinking about how we are able to maintain our agency and to enforce our own self-determination in terms of the ways that we refer to ourselves, how we express our gender, how we express our desire, the fact that we have desire up into our 80s, 90s, the moment that we actually expire, we are still sexual beings. So yeah, this episode was more rumination than it was the kind of like tirade that I normally get on about capitalism up here. But it made me think just about my friend Mike and missing him, and also thinking about, like, how do we find ways to ensure our agency as we age as queer and trans people, and thinking about what making our own wills looks like, and what kinds of community we want to have in our lives, and how can we ensure that we have community in our lives to make sure that our actual desires for our queer selves get to be implemented up until and after our death. So thanks to the girls for that, and thanks for coming.
Woo! Hey, don't tell them again, you got that.